Now before we move on, we're just going to have a quick look at the types of functions. Remember with objects, there were different ways to create an object. We had literals, we had constructors, we had the create method, we had the class. Well, the same with functions. We've got different ways to create a function. But what's nicer is that here it's a bit more simple because there are only two ways to define a function in JavaScript. We've got a declaration and we have an expression. The declaration we've been seeing often through our examples. It's when we have the function keyword, then we have the name of our function, here it's say hi. We've got the parentheses where we pass in a parameter, and then we've got the curly braces where we actually define our function. Here we're just defining hi name by using template literals. So that's a function declaration. Well, how would we write the same function but using a function expression? Well, here you can see how similar it is. We just define a variable called say hi and we assign that the function. You can see in both instances we have to use the function keyword. Yes, there is arrow syntax which we're going to get onto, but before we get onto that, you can see the traditional way to create both functions meant that we had to use the function keyword. So let's just dive into these in a bit more detail. We've got a function declaration on the left and we've got a function expression on the right. And the meaning of both these functions are exactly the same. And by that, I just mean that both create a function and they store that function in a variable. Here we've called the variable say hi. So then you're probably asking, well, then why have one method over the other? And the answer is there's a more subtle difference. And that difference is the timing of when the function is created. And a function can be created immediately or later. And with a function declaration, it's created immediately. And with a function expression, it's only created when it's called. And I'm going to show you examples of what this means in the next lecture, so don't worry if you don't fully understand what this means now. But just at a very, very high level, it just means with a function declaration, you can actually call the function even though you've defined it later on in your code. Okay, but now let's look at function expressions in a little bit more detail. The first thing you'll notice is that you can store the function in a variable. Here we've called it say hi. And the other thing to bear in mind is that with function expressions, do you notice how we don't give the actual function a name? Look at the function declaration where we say function and we follow that by the function name called say hi. Here we just define a function. Well, in programming jargon, that's just known as an anonymous function. It's just a function without a name. We kind of have given it a name because we put it in a variable, but we haven't directly given the function a name like we have with a function declaration. And one of the other massive advantages with a function expression is an iffy. And again, don't get intimidated by these weird words. All that means is that when you want to use a function once, you often do it via a method called iffy, immediately invoked function expression. That's what it stands for. And I don't want to be getting into immediately invoked function expressions right now, but if you're anything like me, you're going to want to be curious as to what this actually means. For the sake of scratching that itch, let me just give you a quick example. Say we have a paragraph element with an ID of test in our HTML. And all we want to do is we want JavaScript to run code that places a string called a yay in that paragraph. How would we go about doing that? Well, of course, we first need to start off with a script tag. Then let's define a function expression. We are not doing a declaration here. We're doing a function expression. We're going to access JavaScript's document object, which is your overall web page. And then on that document, we automatically get access to a getElementById method. The ID we want to get is test, and then we want to change its inner HTML to yay. So there you go. There's our function expression. We close the script tag and we're done. But the problem with this is we haven't called this function, have we? We've now just defined a function expression. So with an immediately invoked function expression, we want to tell the engine to run this immediately, automatically. How would we go about doing that? Well, all you have to do is you have to enclose your code in parentheses, and there you go. You've told JavaScript this is an iffy. And to execute a function, remember what we had to do? That's right, we had to follow that function by parentheses. And it's the same thing with an iffy. So you follow the function with parentheses, and Bob's your uncle. You've just created your first self-invoking function. So let me show you a few examples now, practical examples of the differences between an expression and a function declaration.